Welcome to the Artist Advisory Hotline, the podcast for artists who want valuable guidance and honest answers on how to grow their careers and develop their new project from leading art world experts and artists. Here's your host and founder of the Artist Advisory, Marina Granger. Tune in as she gets you the answers you deserve.
Hello, artists. I'm your host, Marina Granger. And today on the hotline, we have a very, very powerful art woman. We've got my dear friend, Maryana Kaliner, who founded a gallery here on the Lower East Side in New York City called the FORMah Art House. And throughout the episode, we're going to refer to it as FORMah, which is the short version of the gallery. So Maryana is so fascinating. I met her a little bit before she opened up her gallery. She actually came to one of my art walks, which I do for a private members club here in New York City. And it was really cool to talk to her. I remember we really bonded on the fact that we are both from the former Soviet Union. So when it came to art, it was like uh, it's an interesting thing because I feel like we were both raised in a way where we were like, okay, like art is nice and it's part of culture, but like you should go be a doctor or something, which I feel like a lot of people are being raised that way. But here we are, both having amazing careers in the arts. And Mariana is actually helping artists grow their careers with her gallery. So she shows primarily women identifying artists, and especially those who may have been overlooked by the art world due to their race or their age, right? So it's really a fascinating program that she's got. It's just so beautiful to see every single show in her gallery, and I'm so, so proud of her. Now, Mariana came to New York as an immigrant. She was born in the former Soviet Union, grew up in Tel Aviv, and moved to New York City not too long ago. So it's really remarkable to see her thrive and bring all of this attention onto underrepresented artists. So she is going to talk to us today about so many wonderful things. And one thing that I'm really, really excited about, which is how she guides her collectors to collect artwork in a sustainable way with investment in mind. So actually enjoying the artwork that they're collecting instead of thinking about flipping it, and also benefiting both the collector and the artist, and inevitably that is beneficial to the gallery. So let's listen to this interview, and thank you so much for tuning in, and here we go. Hello, Mariana. Thank you so much for joining me today. So excited to have you here on the hotline. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to have a conversation with you and to participate in the hotline.
Yay. So Mariana, you have a gallery over here in New York on the Lower East Side called FORMah, which is short for Form Art House. And tell us a little bit about how you got started, what propelled you to open up a gallery, and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Of course. So yes, thank you. The gallery is named FORMah. We're located in the Lower East Side in New York. Um, to open a gallery was a journey for me. I started as my career as a financial professional and worked in finance for over 13 years and still kind of do. Um, the gallery was opened at the end of 2021 as a nomadic gallery first. So I created several pop-up exhibitions, and that was incredibly fulfilling to support the artists, to show their work, to um, to expose the artwork to potential collectors, and that was absolutely rewarding. So eventually I decided to quit my corporate position and to dive into the art industry, which is fascinating to me. I'm absolutely obsessed, and open a permanent location in the Lower East Side, and to show mainly female identified artists in our space. So we share this powerful mission and hope to show as many as possible and to find some gems in our community.
Great. So moving from finance into art must have been such different worlds, but I'm sure there are some parallels and crossovers. Can you tell me a little bit about how your mind works with that? I know, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but I'm curious to know, like, where are the little crossovers? How do those two worlds collide?
So absolutely, the two words do collide. There are a lot of crossovers between the two of them. A lot of collectors, even including myself, sometimes buy artwork for investment, and this is a huge part of the industry. Um, I mean, there was an episode in Succession where, when I don't want to give any spoilers to whoever didn't watch it yet, but when the father passed away, they found an artwork of Impressionists, and they called it Impressionist investment, which is exactly what it is. A lot of collectors buy art because they know that it will get up in prices, and they consider it as part of their net worth building. They keep it for a while. Most of them play by the market rules, and there are a lot of companies who do invest in artwork as well as part of their portfolio diversification. And a lot of my finance peers do the same. This is part of the way to build the net worth.
And when I hear this, right, there and when I was working in galleries, there was this huge uh thought, like maybe it was sort of like a stereotype that anyone who's buying for investment doesn't really care about the artwork. What do you say about that?
Oh my God, I absolutely disagree. First of all, most of the collectors don't buy art just because they think, okay, I'm going to flip it in 10 years. No, I don't think this is how it works. First of all, and this is the way I teach my collectors as well, even though they want to invest in art, they to feel with the heart first and then think with the head. So most of the collectors, they're not necessarily like what we call professional collectors that buy art to keep it in storage. It hangs somewhere in their house or the office, etc. And they do buy what they like. And they don't buy necessarily to flip it, which is absolutely negative event, or not necessarily, depends on how do you as an artist manage that. um, but most of them, some of them do want to create to later give it as a gift to their children, or keep it within their family, or donate it to foundation or museum, etc. So there are a lot of financial um, aspects to that. So it's not necessarily hurting the artist that, and in my opinion, it's absolutely not, to buy art as an investment piece. And in addition, there are a lot of companies that do exactly that business, and they do play by the rules of the market, which makes it incredibly valuable.
Hmm. Right. Like there we see companies that are like, you can buy 1/16 of this Picasso or whatever it is. And so that's a totally different story. That is a whole different investment. That's an artwork that's not going to be hanging in their house. That's an artwork that they're it's just like they're buying a fraction of the cost, and then the investment company will like flip it for them basically. And then they get an ROI. But what you're talking about is totally different. It's an artwork that is sold to someone that they look at every day. It's hanging up somewhere. It's something that becomes an heirloom that goes into their family and builds their net worth because it adds to their portfolio. So
Absolutely.
when there are collectors who are looking at buying as an investment, right? What are they looking for? Because, can an artist just say, like, all right, cool, like this painting is going to be $100,000 and I'm going to sell it to my niece. And then there you go. Now she has $100,000. It doesn't exactly work that way, right? So, what are they looking for and how does it all work? Maybe it's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question a little bit because if we would have possibly answered to that, we would have cracked the market, right? but
Yeah.
but and you know what? I'm dying to answer to that, and I'm trying to question myself all the time about how can I advise better to my collectors that are looking for an investment. I would say it's more or less what the galleries are looking for. The collectors want the art to increase in value, which means that the trajectory of the artist has to be solid. So every time, and how do we rise prices? Which is another big question, but it's of course the successful career, right? The residencies, the museum shows, the auction record, etc. Um, that it, all this, a lot of aspects that make the prices go up. So I would say that collectors are looking for artists who is serious about their career, who are showing consistently, who are in high demand, who are hot, um, who have probably museum shows aligned, or a little bit more inside information about their career would definitely help to create this investment. I
Yeah,
hope.
so definitely like a good history of exhibitions, accolades like residencies and other achievements. And so the main reason that we can't just, to the artists who are listening that are like, okay, I'm just gonna put a price tag on and give it to my niece. That doesn't exactly work that way because when it comes to the value of the artwork, they need to have it professionally appraised, right? In order to actually be
Course,
added to the net worth.
of course.
And when appraisers are working to appraise the work of art, they're looking at that specific thing. They're looking at the history of the sales, exhibition history, and all of that stuff, right? So um that's kind of interesting. So you guys stick with us and we'll teach you how to have all of that. All right. So, that is such an interesting thing and such a fascinating crossover. It's a whole different type of way to build wealth. And we don't necessarily tend to equate art with wealth a lot. We sometimes think to ourselves, like, okay, well, if you're an artist, it's like you're going to be scraping around for pennies. And that's not true, right?
Oh no, that's absolutely a myth. This is not how it goes. Not at all. And I can't like even say
Yeah.
no enough times.
Yeah, to underline it, right? Like you're literally working in your own gallery, writing these checks to these artists, and you're like, yeah, it's real. You can do this. And I'm so glad that you underline this so wholeheartedly because one of the biggest reasons I started my business was to tell artists exactly this because I was sitting there writing these like 5-figure checks to artists. And meanwhile, they're like, everyone's like, oh, yes, like you have to be a starving artist. It's so not true. Right. So, I wanted to ask you, since we're on this topic of money and art, what is like other than this mindset of being of not of like the starving artist, let's say, right? Which we're totally going to toss out the window on this podcast. It doesn't exist. Other than this, what do you feel is, or maybe let me rephrase this question in my mind first to be more positive. What is a good way for artists to understand how to build the value of their work? What is a good mindset to be in, or something for them to do to build the value of their work? What can they do besides working with the right gallery?
Of course, yes, and working with the right artist advisory. I I think that being proactive is the key, and being an artist is it's absolutely, in my business mind, probably is absolutely like running your own business. So you kind of have to check the boxes once you understand how appraisal works and how the market works. You would like to kind of check all the boxes of the appraisal, right? But also, it's not, and I really want to highlight that it's not really the goal, right, to increase the prices. You go in through the career and you go in through your own journey, and on the way, as long as the longer you go, you're evolve, and the prices will get there. So I would say it's absolutely valuable to apply to all the residencies, to the grants, to keep in touch with curators, with institutional curators, with press if you have, if you can, and be active in terms of your network, and like do the bare minimum of communicating your exhibitions, your achievements, your grants, your residencies, etc., and try to show as constantly as you can. And I think this is actually the key, to show as constantly as you can. Sometimes I'm getting like artists do contemplate if they want to show one piece in one show, and that's absolutely okay to pick and choose. But if you're not showing for a year, say no to the even group exhibition might be a mistake, because there is a marketing rule, right? And I actually think that might even you told me that. I don't know. There is a marketing rule. The more people see the product, and in this case, I hate to say the product, but this masterpiece, the more they see it, or the more they see the signature, the more chances that they actually acquire it. So in marketing, a person to be familiar with the product has to see it at least 7 times. So just get your art out there, and all the opportunities and will come, and it will create a positive flow of interactions. I'm sure everything is absolutely doable.
Oh, I love that. And that's so exciting. It's like, all right, you want people to see your artwork over and over and over again for the marketing aspect, right? And they could see it in a gallery, they could see it on Instagram, they could see it in the press, they could see it being featured as an award winner somewhere or something. And that is so cool. But here's a question for you, right? Like, it's so important for us to see the work, but well, I guess question here is, why is it so important for the artist to actually do all of these residencies and all of these things? Why is it so important when it comes to the sales? Other than, because sometimes you will have somebody come into your gallery who really trusts what you're saying. Maybe they're not seeing the art anywhere. They just see it for the first time, right? Or maybe the second time. They saw the first time on your invite, and they come in and they're interested. And then what do you say to them when they're teetering, tottering, right? And they're really into it. What is that one final push? And I guess what I'm kind of probing for here is, does that final push have anything to do with an artist doing residencies, receiving grants, and all of these things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to say that I hate pushing in general. So, but I do, but as I'm
Guidance.
familiar
It's
with the
that one final guidance.
guidance, as I am familiar with the market, I would like to say that yes, the um, the residencies and consistently showing and press and all these aspects that I've mentioned before is like a proof for the collector and also for the gallery that the artist is serious about their career, that they want to evolve, that they want to grow, they want to get additional experiences that will impact their artwork, um, and etc. So I would say yes, it's way better looking when I would say this artist is a Sharp Valenta graduate and they were in a um, very prestigious residency versus the artists who didn't do anything or didn't receive any grants. And there are very talented artists like that, but it's absolutely harder to make it as a new just graduated versus the artists who already showed in MoMA PS1 or Whitney or so I guess you got the idea. And to all
Yeah.
the emerging artists and whoever just graduated who listens to that, I would suggest absolutely take the steps. It just empowers you as an artist.
Yeah. I mean, I just think of it this way. I feel like a lot of artists listening might think to themselves, like, oh, like, where do I start? This is so complicated. But one thing I want to tell you guys is you don't have to do everything at once. It's just putting one foot in front of the other. And it's actually really, really exciting because when you're putting one foot in front of the other with the intention to do a residency, to apply for a grant and get it, to get press, to exhibit your work. It's all about your actual work, right? It's all about the thing that you love to do. So if you reframe it as sort of like pursuing an obsession with your own work, then it doesn't feel so overwhelming and it doesn't have to be all at once, right? It's just one thing at a time. Slow and steady wins the race. So that's something I had to say. Mariana, I want to briefly ask you another question about this because you said, artists should, it would be great to just have you pursuing ways to exhibit your work all the time, like even if it's a group show or whatever. What about now? This is something that I am like very much wholeheartedly against, but there's this notion of paying to play, like the pay to play model, where maybe there's a gallery out there or an institution that will give an artist space to exhibit their work in exchange for wall rent, right? Like a lot of galleries will reach out to artists and say, galleries, I'm going to put them in quotes, galleries will reach out to artists and say, like, hey, like if you pay me $100, I'll hang up your work and then we'll only take a 30% commission or something like that. As a gallerist, do you find yourself in these spaces? And if you see a lot of like pay to play situations on an artist's CV, where does your mind go? What are you thinking about this?
Um, okay, so there are two aspects to that, right? Once artist does something like that, it depends on the artist how to take the situation and to kind of make it the best version of it. So if the artist is proactive and brings the artwork to these galleries, and then they combine themselves with a curator that can elevate their work, or press, or brings the entire community to see the work and tries to sell it himself as well, or herself as well, I think it might be beneficial. How do I look at it as a gallerist when I see this in the artist's CVs? I honestly don't have a good answer to this question, because to some extent it absolutely tells me that the artist is very interested to get the artwork out there, which is absolutely valuable, especially at the early stages of the career. So it really depends on how to wrap it properly. If it's already went to that direction. From my personal opinion about that is that like super serious galleries probably will not do something like that, or it will be in a very limited capacity, which with a very detailed program that actually might be super beneficial. And yes, I guess so. So I don't really, and honestly, I'm not sure that there is like an absolute way to spot these galleries right away. From my experience, they're short-lived, but maybe I'm mistaken and I don't have enough experience in that specific area. So if the artist is participating in something like that, I would say take a look. What is the criteria? How does it work? What is your benefit from it? What people can you meet? Etc. etc.
That is really interesting. It's like reframe that situation. If that's the one way that you can get yourself out there, great. And it's a good stepping stone, in some ways, is kind of the conclusion here, right? But of course, like I always tell artists to steer clear of this, because when they're in a situation like that, a gallery is not very likely to push for the sale of the artwork, because they're already getting like the rent covered or their operations covered by that fee, that wall, or like the exhibition fee or whatever. So you're really at the mercy of yourself to get everything shown or to get everything sold, right? Like you have to bring in the collectors and be like, hey, look at this, it's hanging there. And, for some people that works. And this excludes the idea of like art fairs, of course, because art fairs are a whole different market. They're like events that artists do. Things like the other art fair, super fine, don't really fall into that exact pay to play category that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like when there's a gallery that does the pay to play, right? And there's I could do a whole episode on that. Anyway.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Well, that's good. That gives us like some clarity. All right. Well, I wanted to also commend you for having your gallery being open for, I think, less than 2 years, and you're already exhibiting at major art fairs. So tell us about some of the fairs where you're exhibiting, and like, tell me a little bit about that.
So fairs is actually one of my favorite parts of having a gallery. I love that. For me, it's adrenaline. I love to pick the artwork for the booth. I like to apply. I like everything from start to the end, from A to Z. Everything that kind of evolves with the art fair. For me, I think, as maybe from my point of view as a gallerist, I would say that it's absolutely integrated part of having a gallery. Art fairs are incredibly beneficial in many, many aspects. It's the way to meet new connections that would never stop into your gallery in any under other circumstances. It's a way to meet and by connections I mean not necessarily collectors, but also press, also institutional representation, curators, etc., and many other people who are genuinely interested in the in art or very involved in the art industry. And it's just incredible exposure. It's incredible exposure both for the gallery and for the artist. And of course, not to mention a huge opportunity to make sales.
I love that. And when you're doing these fairs, I remember when I was doing art fairs, one of my favorite things to do was when I had a break, I would walk around the actual art fair and look to see if I could discover an artist that we could take on into the gallery. Is that something that you do as well?
Yes. Yes, I do. Even if the gallery doesn't participate in the fair, I still go to the fair. I check it out. I see what's going on, how the fair feels, which I think is very important to do, especially like the artists who apply to the art fairs, like other art fair, etc. Before you apply, if you haven't ever been to the art fair, I would suggest you to actually go and to see how it feels to you to be at the fair, if you can imagine your artwork there. And I think this is very valuable. So I try to browse the fair before I actively apply, and I do, even when we do show, I do browse the fair and see if the artists, if there are artworks that are interesting to me, and then I look at the artist website and Instagram, etc. So yes.
Oh, yes, it's one of the ways to get discovered. But speaking of discovering artists, can you tell us how do you normally like come to work with the artists that you work with? How do you find your artists?
So that covers basically a lot of different ways. Some of the artists are introduced to me by a variety of people. Sometimes it's collectors that I work with that say to me, "Oh, you should take a look at this artist. We just saw them in Peru. Maybe you would like to bring them to New York." Sometimes it's curators who introduce me to the artist. Once happened that, or even several times, that I picked up artists from the art fair, and that was very exciting. And also, it was very interesting to see how during the day the artist was navigating the booth, and it actually told me a lot about how serious the artist about their career. Also from Instagram, which also happens sometimes, after like in the evening, I just sit with my tea and browse the Instagram, and I absolutely love it. And you can see like it shows me how long the artist creates, what is their, if they have a signature, and then I get to their website, to the statement, and it happened not once that I picked up artists from the Instagram. The greatest tool ever to see the work. So I guess a lot of different directions. Sometimes once I was a judge for an open call, and several of the artists didn't actually make it to the exhibition back then, but I picked them up for my gallery, which was, and that was amazing experience.
Wait, was this the open call we judged at Keith Smith Gallery?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So if I'm not mistaken, I picked 3 artists from that open call.
Yeah, that didn't even get into the show,
That
but
didn't even get to the show.
see, you guys, like, stop, like, is this amazing? Like, even if it's like, There's so much to be said about this energetically because I feel like sometimes when we get this rejection, we're like, oh no, it's the worst thing ever. Ah, but everything that's happening is happening for you, not to you. And in this case, for these artists, it was really happening for them, not to them. For them, meaning they got to work with one of the judges, with Mariana in her gallery. So that is just so incredible. Oh, I love that. Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience with art fairs in a new capacity. So you've taken on a bit of an official role at Volta. So tell us a little bit about that.
Uh, okay. Yes, I joined as an advisory board member to Volta Art Fair, especially the New York chapter. This is very exciting. I'm super honored to be offered to be a board member. It's absolutely fascinating. First of all, I love Volta. I think it's a great fair and it has amazing potential to do so many interesting stuff. Their team is fantastic. They have a new director who is very active and already changing a lot of aspects of the fair and focusing on the VIPs and doing a lot of very interesting stuff his way. So I'm sure that Volta this year and in following years will be absolutely great. As an advisory board member, I think there are a lot of things that I can do with my experience, especially with my business experience and financial experience, and also like the combination of that in the art industry will be absolutely interesting. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, I can't wait to see what transpires. This is so great. Mariana, tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you, what else is coming up for you and the gallery, and where we can learn more about you and your gallery.
Oh, wow. Coming up for me, I hope only good things in the best and the most accurate way. So we have amazing program for the gallery. We have very interesting artists that are coming up. We have several fairs that I will participate in this year. I don't want to name it till it's closed, but we already got accepted, and I'm not communicating till it's done. So I really want it to all be absolutely done and nailed, and then I'd love to communicate. So it will be amazing if you guys follow the gallery at in Instagram. It's at the FORMah, and we have a website, theformah.com. And for me personally, it's a very exciting year because I'm evolving in the different directions. One of them is the advisory board of Volta Art Fair, new directions for the gallery, new directions in my business capacity. So more exciting things to come. And I'm looking forward to it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mariana, for coming and being here with us today and sharing all this really cool information and your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. Support your community by sharing this podcast, leaving a review, and follow The Artist Advisory on Instagram at @the_artist_advisory, and visit us online at www.theartistadvisory.com.